people are making really quick purchase decisions. 50% of people are purchasing in 15 minutes or less when they get on Amazon, and 28% are purchasing in 3 minutes or less. The way I interpret that is in your media assets, because that's what is popping up on people's mobile phones, because about 70 to 80% of people are shopping on mobile phones. So they're looking at media assets, title, reviews, price, stuff like that. They're not looking at a lot of text. So you, in that media asset section, you have to call out the USPs and overlay that on top of lifestyle photos. Like, you have to really consolidate what you're doing so that you can get to the point quicker for people. Because I don't think people realize, like, they've got maybe these elaborate photos and photo shoots, and that's great. But if you're not telling people why and getting past those objections quickly, I think you're losing a lot from a conversion standpoint.
You are listening to Power Marketing with Kevin Lee. Kevin and his agency Did It have helped thousands of businesses win through superior marketing, as have his books, articles, speaking engagements, and the eMarketing Association Power Marketing podcasts. Here's Kevin.
I'm super jazzed to be chatting with Michael Maher, who lives and breathes Amazon and all things Amazon and marketplace related. But before we jump into his day job as Chief Idea Officer of Cartology, I'd love for you to talk about the longer game, as well as how you give back to the community as an instructor.
Sure. Well, first, I thought you were going to ask me about my Ariel t-shirt, but I'm glad that we can just move on.
It blended in so well with your microphone that I didn't even notice it, to be perfectly honest.
I can proudly say I'm part of a big Disney family. We love going there. So to Disney World specifically. That was a great intro, by the way, and thank you for that. I appreciate it was like very fluid, like you knew exactly what you're doing. Maybe I could take a few notes from you on my podcast, which is called The Longer Game. And we talk about the future of retail. And it's not like soothsayer style. It's really just, I saw a need for brands who really want to lean into the future, which I see as being omni-channel. My, focus is Amazon from my agency perspective, but there's a need to be in multiple channels because your consumers in multiple channels, and you want to, I think the more visibility you have in each of those channels, the more credibility you have with them as well. And I know there are brands that, have had successful visibility on Amazon, and that actually helps them to perform better in retail too, because now they've got this elevated visibility. Amazon is the number one product search engine. 53% of people go there directly to look for products. And I felt like there was this conversation about retail that needed to be had from the brand's perspective. And I'm not even much of a podcast listener, but I got feedback and coaching from someone was like, it's a way to stay relevant and to talk in front of an audience. And so I just bit the bullet and did it and started it back in 2021. And it's been a really interesting experience, really starting to see this second season that launched about 2 months ago start to take off. We're really pushing out content on all the channels. And the thing that has been really interesting that's evolved is not just talking about retail, but sometimes I feel like, and I mean, you're in the thick of it. You're a doer. You're running an agency. You are doing the work, and sometimes stuff is talked about like on high, and it's not really looking down. Doesn't necessarily have to be in the weeds, but there's this theoretical component that it's talked about. And all the people that are coming on my show are sort of people like yourself. They're involved in retail in some capacity. They could be a consultant for companies that are wanting to go from digital into retail. They could be someone that's e-commerce related. It could be someone that is another Amazon agency owner or a brand. It doesn't matter as long as, as they're part of the retail community. And retail means digital. It means, in person. Just have that conversation about the realities of stuff. And my, audience or my target audience here are those brands that want to know more about how to be successful across the board. And so it's become this really authentic conversation with people that are out there doing stuff. And I feel like it's gotten a good reach. I mean, it's a slow start. I'm not expecting, hockey stick growth. Maybe I'm off track there because a lot of people do expect that, but it's been a really good, interesting experience. I've had a lot of great conversations with people.
Yeah, and I really, if you change one company's trajectory, right, it's totally worth it, right? If you solve one company's problem or one individual's problem, you turned them into a hero within their own company. That's all it takes, really. So I wouldn't get too obsessed about the numbers of listeners necessarily, because it's quality over quantity there. And similarly, like when you instruct folks, in sort of giving classes, right? All you need is one or two people in a class to just have an epiphany and go back and rock it, on their accounts. And, if that word gets back to you, great. But even if it doesn't, right, you did your good deed.
I think that, when I think about doing, the right thing, it doesn't often come with a reward. And, my perspective on life is that God doesn't want you to see that stuff, because you'd probably get a really big head if you knew how much of a positive impact you're having on certain people. And I think good service shouldn't be about the recognition. It's nice to have it. I'm not going to lie. It's nice to have recognition, but I think you feel better about doing work correctly and having a positive impact on people. But if you get too focused on that, then it becomes about the recognition. It becomes about the work itself instead of just doing the right thing. And in terms of instructing people, I used to teach drum lessons. I don't do that anymore, but that was a lot of fun. But in terms of more recently, and from a subject matter expert standpoint, last year I did create a course called Selling on Marketplaces with CXL, which does a bunch of digital learning. They were putting together this e-commerce mini degree. Now you can major in entrepreneurship in school, which I'm kind of torn. I'm like, I guess that's good, but entrepreneurship is also like in the doing. So it needs to be a good mixture of both. But if you can know more going in, then you can definitely, I think, be more successful. I learned a lot of stuff the hard way, probably out of ignorance, but also just because I had to figure it out. But I created this course for selling on marketplaces, and my background was originally selling. Like, I started in e-commerce 13 years ago, selling on eBay, and then launching on Amazon and sold like just kind of generic stuff. Then started private label, started my own brand, and eventually worked my way into the agency side. But that's kind of where a lot of my initial experience came from. And it gave me a real different understanding of the power of all these different marketplaces. And putting that together was a lot of fun. And I did get someone who went through it and gave really high praise for the course. And I don't know a ton of people because it's not my course. Technically, CXL owns it. But I got good feedback from that. And that felt really good. I put a lot of time and effort into that because I felt like, again, there's a lot of theoretical stuff out there, and I wanted it to be practical for people so they felt like they could, because the reason they're taking this is they want to be able to do it. So I wanted them to feel like they could go in and do it themselves and give them really step-by-step stuff. I think there's always going to be some theoretical stuff, but to your point before we even got started today is, you have to test stuff and you have to see what's going to work. And so I wanted to make it so it was super, super practical for people.
Yeah, that's great. And obviously your day job is Chief Idea Officer at Cartology. And so I'd imagine that gives you an opportunity to touch a lot of clients, touch a lot of brands, and ideate around what will work for each of them independently as well as a group. So what does your day look like? What's a typical day at Cartology?
Well, if I don't have fires to put out, which is ultimately the goal, to not have to do that. But I think if you're running a business, sometimes you have things that pop up that that you have to handle. And my title, Chief Idea Officer, may be slightly misconstruing because I'm not coming up with all the ideas. It was a great title that an old branding guy I worked with came up with, and I just decided to use it. But my day, especially my focus this year, has really been on the sales and marketing side. So I built kind of out the operations side of thing, which is all the client facing stuff, built a good structure there, have SOPs, have processes in place, and have the right people in place. That's a big component. And I don't even think it needs to be someone that has the most experience, but someone that's willing to learn and is coachable and wants to grow. I'll take that over someone who is a jerk and thinks they know everything and can't be coachable or can't learn anything, because that's a recipe for disaster. And it doesn't align with our core principles as a team. One of our core values is teamwork for the win. So you have to be willing to contribute to the team and what's, betterment of the team. And sometimes for me, the betterment of the team means I go on to a client and maybe there was a mistake that we made on something and we had to correct it. and I go and apologize for that. And I take the to blame and tell my team, like, look, I wasn't the one that did this specific thing, but we want to make it right with this person. And it ends up actually going really well. So it's a good example of how to, I think, build transparency with people. And the sales and marketing side for me, it's been a lot of prospecting, a lot of refining what my recommendation or proposal process looks like, a lot of work on the discovery side, making sure I'm really understanding what problems people have, knowing what I do well and what I actually can work on, and being able to size up what their impacts are like. And so that's been a lot of my day to day. And the other, I'd say probably half of it right now, the marketing stuff is kind of to come, because the sales work and then kind of administrative stuff on, I am the director of admin, but I have an assistant that helps. So getting the right person up and running in that role, because I had someone, but have decided to get someone else in that role that I felt like was a better fit. So getting that person up and running is kind of what my current day-to-day looks like, and making sure, okay, we've got all these processes, but could they be better? And onboarding of a team member, onboarding of a client, we try to iterate on those processes because we feel like we can do better. So refining that stuff is kind of what my day-to-day looks like. And it means getting on discovery calls. Sometimes it means doing a podcast like this. If there's some marketing stuff, recording my own podcast. More recently, I've spent a little bit of time in Zapier trying to set up automations to make my life easier, which can initially be a lot of work and a little bit frustrating, but it's fun to tackle some of that new stuff, and it definitely keeps my mind working.
Absolutely. And I agree with you. Process is key as you're going to try to scale anything, whether it's an agency or another business. I'm not OCD enough to be great at process, but I have people that I hire who are great at that.
I think that you said that really well. Like, what your strengths are and you hire for the other stuff. And I took several years ago, based on a consultant's recommendation, took an index called the Colby A index. And I liked it a lot because it was not a personality test. It wasn't like a strengths finder. It literally was, how do you take action on things? And so it looks through data. It looks through process or follow through. It looks through how risk averse or how prone to being okay with risk you are. I always forget what the opposite of risk averse is. Risk tolerant. There we go. And then it looks at how you implement. So like, do you just see ideas and you can put them into play, or do you need to build a model of that? And taking that test was really helpful for me. And it showed me, when it comes to follow through or really building out an entire process, I can get something up and running, but there are way better people that are going to make it a more refined process and really build that out. And so even looking at who's on my leadership team and do they complement me in that regard, because I want to lean into other people's strengths. I know I'm not going to be great at everything, even if I selfishly want to be great. I know that's not possible.
Right. Well, we both probably talk to a bunch of marketers and brands, both because of our clients, but also as we prospect out and find new clients that are a good fit for our agencies. And one thing I really hear is this love-hate relationship that brands have with Amazon, right? They hate the fact that they don't really own the customer relationship, but at the same time, it is the e-commerce search engine, so you don't have a choice of not being there. So you might as well make the best of it. So I'd love to hear how you think folks should be thinking about Amazon as part of their sort of retail marketing mix, right? How should they be positioning it?
Well, I definitely feel that love-hate relationship. And fortunately, I don't work for Amazon, so I can be a lot more unbiased. I guess I'm still biased because I have my perspective, but I can be a little bit more free about what I say. I think the way that I see people looking at it a lot of times is either Amazon is the answer or Amazon is the devil. It's like it's the savior, it's the devil. And I think there are components of both of those things, and I see that perspective. But you said it really well. It's a necessary channel to be on. So how do you make it work? And I think that's really the perspective that we try to come at Cartology. And it's easier for me to look at it that way because I'm not the brand owner, and so it's not as personal for me, but I actually
Right.
think that there's an advantage in that, because I remember when I was selling and I would be dealing with customer service questions where someone was basically stealing product and or leaving a negative review. I remember selling, I think it was an iPhone 3 case. And so, I mean, it was a long time ago, but someone said, this doesn't fit my iPhone 4. And they gave it like a 1 out of 5. I'm like, yeah, of course it doesn't fit your iPhone 4. It's not an iPhone 4 case, but Amazon would not take down the review, but it felt very personal to me. So I had someone else start answering those messages because I didn't want to get stressed by it. But I think it's a necessary channel. And how do you make it work? They're not the best partner. And I've been, from a selling perspective, I think they could do a lot better. They have made improvements over the past several years, but their mission statement is to be the most customer-centric company in the world, not the most seller-centric company in the world. And they know that. And I believe Jeff Bezos was even quoted as saying, we know that sometimes it's difficult to work with Amazon. You can use it as a headwind or you can use it as a tailwind. We choose to use it as a tailwind to propel us forward. And so I think we have to be really solutions oriented. We know that there's going to be problems and we expect that. And I think when we do encounter problems, it's not oh man, I knew this was going to happen. It's okay. Like we knew that there's going to be something. Let's address it. Let's take care of it. And I think the other component is when you run into problems with Amazon, they often iterate. So do you have a solution for handling this again if it comes out, or do you know what the next step is or the next place you need to be in order to address or solve this problem? That's how I think you should look at Amazon. There are going to be problems. I think Amazon is a great microcosm for life. Life is difficult. It can be very rewarding, but it's also very difficult. And so if you can walk into that, not have a negative attitude, but you can say, okay, how can we do this? How can we go about making this work? Because you need to make it work, because it's one, if we're talking about life, you got to make your life work. But the Amazon piece is, it's where most people go to look for a product, and you can lose credibility if you're not there. So how do you make it work on Amazon? And like I said, that's one of the reasons why we have a job, is because people don't want to do it themselves, or they don't want to be the ones to do it themselves. And so they need assistance. They need help to actually get that stuff done.
Absolutely. And you've had a chance, not only from your own accounts, pre-agency world, but in your role with Cartology, to look at a lot of, Amazon, Seller Central accounts, and sort of see the good, the bad, and the ugly. So as far as the ugly goes and stuff that people tend to do wrong, that you were like, oh, that's an easy low-hanging fruit of something that we can fix. What is it that often pops out at you when you look at these accounts, either as you're prospecting or getting ready to take them over as an agency?
One of the biggest pieces of low-hanging fruit, especially when I look at advertising, there's so many different perspectives, but one of the things that I see time and time again from people who are, running their own accounts is they are not properly segmenting keywords inside of their advertising campaigns. And so they are getting poor results for a couple reasons. One is they're stuffing 100 terms into this campaign that maybe has, $20 in budget a day. And so Amazon's not going to be able to spend $20 efficiently across 100 terms, especially even if your CPC is on the lower end of like $1. So properly segmenting terms, I think focusing on the right terminology and then determining, okay, I want to spend money on these, and so I'm not going to worry about these other terms, and just prioritizing. So segmenting and prioritizing things that I don't see happen a lot, and people are just throwing stuff in there, I think, hoping it's going to work. But if they were able to pull out and group terminology, even if it's down to 10 terms, because Amazon's also going to start to auto-optimize inside those campaigns. They're going to see, okay, this is working well, and we're going to kind of divert and prioritize spend here. And these other ones, we don't think they're relevant, or they weren't really starting to get impressions, so we're going to prioritize it on this other end over here. And Amazon is doing that, not quite to the extent that maybe some other platforms are, but they're definitely, once something starts to work, they'll start to give that a little bit priority. And like I said, there's only so much budget that you can handle. So if people would segment better, and that means product terminology grouping. So like, hey, I'm going to group this black t-shirt terms together, and I'm not just going to put all my t-shirts in this one. I'm going to really focus on putting a relevant term with the right product so that people have a tendency, hopefully, to convert. But then even looking at, broad phrase and exact match, are we pulling those out into, they don't have to necessarily be separate campaigns, but are we bringing those out into separate ad groups so that we can appropriately negate stuff too. So I mean, that's a really easy thing that if anybody did on the advertising side, they would start to see efficiencies, and I think they'd have better return on ad spend, assuming they're bidding on the right stuff and they're getting traction, but they would have better return on ad spend because they can start to funnel more in there. And I think that's another kind of a bad thing that we end up seeing happen is people want to grow the business, but they're so timid on ad spend. And I get that that's your money, but if you don't put enough pressure on that, you're not going to see the velocity of sales you need to start really ranking high. And I think catalog wise, you're right. We get to see across a lot of different categories. And I think that is one of the benefits of working with us. We see not just what's happening in beauty, but in food and beverage and apparel. We can see different trends that are specific to that category, but we can also see stuff that's happening across multiple accounts. And we can be a little bit more prepared. Like Amazon started to ask for verification of people's accounts that have been active or been live for several years. They're like, hey, we want you to re-verify your identity. And so we're like, hey, just be aware this is happening. We can kind of prep people for it so they don't feel that, oh man, I had this thing that, popped up. So there's a benefit of that. But we are, one of the other things is just when it comes to creative, people are still sometimes really focusing on just, kind of generic product photos. And like, even if it's a good shot, people are making really quick purchase decisions. 50% of people are purchasing in 15 minutes or less when they get on Amazon, and 28% are purchasing in 3 minutes or less. The way I interpret that is in your media assets, because that's what is popping up on people's mobile phones, because about 70 to 80% of people are shopping on mobile phones. So they're looking at media assets, title, reviews, price, stuff like that. They're not looking at a lot of text. So you, in that media asset section, you have to call out the USPs and overlay that on top of lifestyle photos. Like you have to really consolidate what you're doing so that you can get to the point quicker for people. Because I don't think people realize, like, they've got maybe these elaborate photos and photo shoots, and that's great. But if you're not telling people why and getting past those objections quickly, I think you're losing a lot from a conversion standpoint.
Yeah, those are really great points. And fascinatingly, they tend to be really similar to some of the low-hanging fruit you see in an AdWords or Bing account, right? Which is a Google advertising or a Bing account. And that if your account structure is bad, it becomes a headwind for you. And then you can't actually spend the money because of that headwind. And once you sort of align things, all of a sudden your quality score goes up and your ROAS goes up, and you can spend more and grow your business. So it's really interesting to see the parallels there between, the Amazon sponsored listings ecosystem and Google, which has of course been around a long time as a PPC marketplace. And speaking of Google, one of the great things about Amazon that I really love is the fact that their domain authority is unmatched, right? So if you thought about having a product on your own domain and having it up there as FBA, the chances of it ranking, in Google are considerably higher, right? Unless you have just an amazing, domain with authority as a retailer or as a brand, your chances of ranking as part of an Amazon SERP, right, listing are much higher. So do you guys get involved in sort of tweaking the product listing pages to get them to pop from an SEO perspective? And if so, have there been any fun stories as a result of, changing some language on a page and getting it to pop up in Google?
Yeah, fun stories. I don't think so, but I have some frustrating stories.
Okay, we can go with those.
I mean, if that kind of aligns with what we were talking about, we're definitely optimizing for SEO. I think there's a couple things to keep in mind, though, with Amazon. Product description is not a part of SEO anymore. It hasn't been for some time. And the three real main components are your title, your backend search terms, and your bullet points in that order. If you have A+ content, you can have like alt text that can help and contribute. But I think your title and your backend search terms really need to be strong, and they can't be stuffed, and they need to be efficient. And the bullet points is interesting because I said, people are making really quick purchase decisions. I don't think anybody's really reading those bullet points. I think they're maybe using it for like tech specs, but it does matter from an SEO perspective. So I think utilizing your USPs instead of just calling them out in text, they need to actually be in the images section. But in terms of ranking higher for SEO, yeah, we're sometimes checking like, are we even indexing for this term? Are we even going to show up when someone searches for that? And if not, how do we correct that? How do we make that issue? And then prioritizing like, what are the most important terms? There are probably tons of terms that you could put forward, but your title gets max 200 characters, and the back end of and that may have even been adjusted to a little bit more, but the back end search terms, you get 200 characters as well. It was 5,000. It went down to 250, and now it's down to 200. So you have to be really, and I'm not talking about words, I'm talking about characters. So you have to be really intentional and specific about that. I think some of the frustrating stories that I've heard is you have to be really clear about language that you're using, because Amazon is scanning that stuff and using algorithms to like when they are determining, hey, we want to go through and control anything pesticide on Amazon right now. So we're going to have something scan all the listings on Amazon. And if it mentions pesticide, even if it says non-pesticide or it says this is not a pesticide, it doesn't matter. They're going in and scanning that, and they're now delisting or suppressing your product listing because of that. So I think one of the most important things from an SEO perspective that we're constantly evolving with is, and I'm seeing, show up on Slack channels, hey guys, this is now a part of Amazon's terms that are not approved or not, community friendly. So we need to remove them. And we're having to really make sure that we're staying on top of that, because otherwise products get suppressed, and that actually, as soon as you're suppressed, there's no sales. Sales history starts to drop. Amazon search algorithm, even when you do get back up and running, you've now lost, let's say it's a day or 2 days. If you're in a really competitive category like beauty, you lose 2 days worth of sales history. It can really impact where you show up in search results, because sales history and sales velocity are so important to Amazon to show up high in search. I think it's because they want to be the most customer centric company in the world, and the products that sell well are the ones that, that's where they make money, but it also gives people the best experience. And that's part of why most people don't go past page one, because they find what they need on page one, and why Amazon doesn't even show you search results past page 7. Because I think if they were to host all that information, it'd probably be a waste of space for them or technology.
Yeah, one thing relating to that is often I've seen brands not bother to SEO their own store pages on Amazon, when in fact, from a reputation management perspective, if somebody does go to a Google or a Bing and does a search on the brand, you want the right places to show up, not just yourself, not just your domain, right? But the other places where they can buy. And the marketplaces are the other places you could buy. And if the person has a preference for an Amazon or preference for a Walmart, those are other places you can rank, as well as obviously your social media profile pages and a bunch of other things that you want to have show up from a reputation management perspective. But it's just sort of not on a lot of people's radar that, that should probably be one of the places I do a little bit of tweaking, sometimes even linking to it, right? Because you can improve the ranking of a page within Amazon by linking to it. So it's really interesting to go through this strategy process with clients and get them to think about, like, what are all the little tweaks we can make that might have a positive impact in visibility in Google, and of course visibility within Amazon.
And one of the interesting things now is Amazon provides Amazon attribution, which allows people to track incoming or external traffic into Amazon. So if you are linking out from your website and you're saying, hey, buy this on Prime or whatever the case might be, you can now track if they're clicking, adding to cart, sessions, purchases, conversions, all that stuff. You can now track that. And that was not something that, even 3 years ago was really possible. And people have really started to lean into that, utilizing influencers so they can track if influencers are actually sending successful campaigns their way. People are now sending AdWords campaigns into Amazon directly, and they're using attribution links to track how successful the campaigns are, because otherwise it was just a black box. And the other component of that is Amazon's giving you a referral fee. So they're giving you a up to 10% referral if someone purchases something. They're giving that back to you. So there's a lot of incentive to not just track it, but to get that referral fee too.
Right. A great point. What are some other sort of promotional tools that you think are underutilized that merchants should think about using with it? Maybe category specific, but either within the category in general, what are some promotional tools that have either been around a long time and are underused or are fairly new and just people haven't gotten around to using them yet?
Well, Amazon is really heavily leaning into different days. Like, of course, Prime Day is big. They did a fall Prime event last year, so added a second one, I think, because people were seeing, sales start to slump. One of the other things now is we're seeing like pet days or anything like that. So if your category is having a specific day, leveraging those days not to make more money, but to provide a discount to drive additional sales velocity, I think that's crucial. To lean into those days. I don't think most people are really seeing profitable days. Then if they're launching a discount, it's to drive that additional sales velocity so that you basically have stronger authority inside of Amazon search engine because they want to see that. And I think one thing I would say is when it does come to a Prime Day, our team is really leveraging those Prime exclusive discounts. Majority, we have a backup, an FBM or fulfilled by merchant strategy for most of our brands because it's become necessary with how limited Amazon has been with inventory. But utilizing those Prime exclusive discounts, we've really seen a lot of success with. And I think part of the reason they're so successful is just because of the Prime consumer. They are the ones that are spending the most. They convert at a much higher rate. Non-Prime members on Amazon convert at like 14%, which is, maybe 5 times what a good D2C site is if we're looking at 3 to 4%. But Prime members convert 70% of the time. They're just so bought into it and they're so used to purchasing. And I think they're probably the ones that are making the quicker purchases because they already know what I'm looking for. It's going to depend upon category. If you're looking for toothpaste or you just are looking for something that's more of a consideration, a Bluetooth keyboard or something, and you're looking for specs, you're like, I just need this, I need to get it, probably making a quicker purchase decision. If you're looking at a beauty or hair care product that you're like, okay, this is kind of affecting my overall look and aesthetic, then you're probably going to take more time to consider. But the Prime members are so purchase, let's just say friendly that they leaning into those kinds of discounts, I think has a much bigger impact and builds sales velocity. So I think looking at coupons and strategies, I know people don't want to devalue their price, but you're using those as a way to drive excitement, which helps your sales velocity so that you can rank higher in search organically. Because advertising is a great tool, but it shouldn't be the only thing you're relying upon to get sales.
That's a great point. And obviously there are different coupon strategies. There's the little one where you have to check the checkbox, but in certain cases, if you're doing partnerships, right, you can even get single-use coupons, from the back end and feed those out to partners. Have you heard of any success stories using those strategies, either with influencers or partner organizations?
Yeah, the whole coupon external thing outside of Amazon is something we've kind of changed over the past couple of years, just because Amazon's gotten really particular about what they call review manipulation or really rank manipulation, meaning you offer something that's outside of Amazon that nobody else sees and it's not available to their consumer. They've got a little bit of a gray area there to say, hey, you've got an unfair advantage over all the other sellers. And so it's not fair. And really the problem there is people were basically going to deal sites and saying, hey, we're going to give you this item for free. And we want you to leave a review too. Yeah. So we're giving you this coupon and their products would shoot up really high in search results. And so where there's a will, there's a way. People find these ways to sort of obfuscate the system. But Amazon's really cracked down on that. And so I think if you are leveraging a coupon, it's something that you probably need to do with an influencer that's influencer specific. And Amazon still has that. But when you create it and do it in a way that is, rank manipulation, Amazon can really come down on it. And they are not super lenient on that stuff. I mean, you can say, hey, if you knowingly did that, hey, we made a mistake. But I don't think Amazon's really allowing any of those people back on because they want to be reputable as a marketplace. And they're under a ton of antitrust scrutiny. So anything that they do, they're a really easy target from a media perspective too. So I'm not saying any of it's all of it's unwarranted, but someone can say, hey, there's 7,000 fake products on Amazon, which sounds like a lot, but when you look at the hundreds of millions or 10, 20, however many millions of products are on there, you're like, oh, that's less than 1%. Okay, it's really not that bad. The fact that they've got it that under control. So I think just how we try to keep stuff as visible and available on Amazon as possible.
Yeah, great points. Obviously most of the reporting within Amazon, within the merchant area is ROAS focused, right? But some marketers want to make sure that they're sort of on the radar and perhaps do a little bit of mid to upper funnel marketing as well. What's your recommendation with regards to going increasingly upper funnel from conquest advertising to category level advertising, and how aggressive do you recommend folks are in sort of not necessarily hyper focused on immediate ROAS?
Yeah, I mean, for most brands that are getting started, and I mean, let's just say you're doing under a couple million, depending upon what your budget is, it's all going to be really search focused. So you want to really lean heavily into that, and that's where the lowest hanging fruit are. That's why you've got to really optimize product detail page, because once you get the click, you want to get the conversion there. Once you start getting to a certain point, and it's going to kind of depend upon long-term goals as well. If hey, I want to dominate in this category, I think you look at starting with search. And once you've gotten a little bit of momentum, you can then use something like a DSP on Amazon side to start to bring greater awareness, but also you can retarget the people that looked at your product from a search perspective, and you can now hit them again and bring them back to convert, and you're getting the biggest bang for your buck. And over time, you're going to, again, start to increase the visibility in search. And so, and then once you get to a certain point, you're like, okay, we're really maximizing what we can from a search perspective, start using DSP in order to drive greater awareness and doing more over the top type stuff that's allowing you to just build brand awareness that a lot of bigger brands doing. They're going out and doing that. And that's what, like the Coca-Colas and all the companies in the world, before there was ever coupon or tracking or attribution or anything like that, it was run a big advertising campaign, hope that sales increase. And if maybe they were really smart, they would leverage like a coupon that would give someone $1 off, and they could track and say, oh, it was with this specific ad. I heard someone who did that. They're like, when I was doing it early on, we would add a specific coupon code to something so they could see it came from this advertising campaign, or it came from this region of the country, so they could start to track it. But now attribution's gotten a lot more sophisticated, but it really kind of depends upon your budget. If you've got, 10, 20 grand to put into advertising a month and that's it, I'd say go into search, just continue to drive that hard until you've got more budget, because Amazon wants a lot more from a DSP perspective. And we're really just starting to do a lot more, digging in that area, but you can get really specific from an audience perspective. And as those brands reach a certain point, it becomes super, super powerful. Now, if you're starting off and you're like, hey, we're a big brand, but we really want to go hard on Amazon, you can start using that a lot sooner. Some brands that maybe are on Amazon for a couple of years and they don't bring on DSP until after that. And then some who are like, hey, we really want to go big from the start. I think it's something that you can start to bring in sooner. And then beyond that, leveraging something like Google Ads to Amazon, the external traffic piece, sending stuff from social media and tracking it with Amazon attribution coming in. That's kind of a lot of people get excited about these things that aren't the core things. And I think sending people to product detail pages from an AdWords, it may not be, I don't think it's a main strategy, but I think it's something that you should, as you evolve, you should start adding that in so that you can maximize it. Amazon loves that external traffic. So if you start sending in external traffic and things are converting, I think you're going to see much, much better results long-term.
Yeah, that's a great point. Obviously, the more budget flexibility you have with regards to KPIs, the more things you can try at once, right? Not everything's going to crush it, but you can try more if you have the flexibility to place bets in more than one place at the same time.
When we talked about prioritizing stuff, like people have to know, I'm not going to be able to bid on even every term from a search perspective. Right. So I have to say, what is most relevant? Where do I feel like we're going to get the most bang for our buck? Because most people don't have unlimited budgets. They're not the big, conglomerate or CPG companies. And so they have limited budget, or they've only got so much for the year. And they have to stay within that. So I think just prioritizing what is going to be the most important, and then just going hard. And if you believe in your product, I think you'll start to see efficiencies. I mean, you have to know what you're doing, but once you start building momentum in that area, then it allows you to expand. But I think there's this, it's kind of a similar idea with what's the word? Having a side hustle.
Right.
People are like, I'm going to have 5 side hustles and let's see which one sticks. It's like, no, you kind of have to pick a lane and really devote time and focus there. Same with like a serial entrepreneur, someone who starts multiple companies. It's not like they're starting 5 companies at a time. A lot of it starts from doing one thing really well, and then they've got a process or a system or a person that's helping to run that, and they can start to expand out from there. So I think it's finding that lane that you can really drive velocity in any regard, and then starting to expand out from there. Just knowing, where to focus and when to expand, I think are key.
Great. Well, it sounds like you've got on your to-do list for this year some growth and some structure that you want to add to your organization. So, what has you excited for the next year? Like, what do you? Is it AI? Is it trends that are going on? Is it just growing the company? What's got you jazzed up?
Man, it's not generative AI. Although I'm still, I know there's a ton of buzz about that, and I think there's utility there. I don't think it's not going to replace experts like a lot of people think it will. Like, I saw someone on LinkedIn recently say, yeah, because going to WebMD and self-diagnosing and then saying, hey, I got it all figured out. Like, just that's kind of what AI is doing, is like accumulating this information for you. So right. That's not the thing I'm most excited about. Honestly, one of the things I'm most excited about is just a lot of the effort that I put into the sales process, and making sure I'm really sharp in that regard is starting to pay off. And so I'm super appreciative of that. And I've just consumed a ton of knowledge, books, trainers, stuff like that. Like, how can I improve? How can I get better here? Because I really know Amazon well, but do I really know what I'm doing in the sales process? So getting better in that regard. But one of the things from a team perspective that's been great, I read Traction at the end of last year, probably like September, October. And man, I just felt it like talking to me. I was like, how does this guy know exactly what's going on in my business? And we started implementing that at the end of last year. And Traction is all for people that are listening, is all about implementing something called EOS, or the Entrepreneurial Operating System. And the author of the book basically said there are 6 components of any entrepreneurial organization. If you can nail these, then you can really be successful. And we were in the right market. I think we've got the right pricing strategy, and we've got the skill set. So now there were some operational things that we started tweaking. And man, as soon as we started implementing it, and really it was just like, hey, what are the things that are plaguing us right now? What are the problems that we're having? As soon as we started talking more about that stuff within structure and addressing them, we started seeing changes that were great. And it's taking a lot of effort from the team, but we're already starting to see that pay off. And the team that are really here and like in it to win it, they're even more galvanized, which is great. So I'm excited to see this time next year how much we've grown, because the implementation of that takes about 12 months is what I hear. Right. It could take less if you're really aggressive, or it could take more if you're taking it slowly, but giving it about a year helps you kind of catch your stride. And so I'm really excited to see how we've progressed from then, and hopefully we've got things really a little bit more streamlined. And that's part of the scaling process. Is we know there's processes, but does everyone know the processes? Is everyone doing the same processes? And as we start talking about that, we start to find efficiencies internally. So I'm honest, it's not a super sexy thing. Like, man, operations are going to be great. But I mean, it helps me have peace of mind knowing we've got the right people, right butts in the right seats. That's, part of EOS, but we've got the right processes, and people are going through the appropriate chain of command.
Well, I look forward to watching your continued evolution. Thanks so much for joining me, and it was great brainstorming.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it.
Kevin Lee's Power Marketing is available on all your favorite podcast networks. Kevin loves helping businesses excel at marketing. Having marketing challenges? Just like Santa in The Miracle on 34th Street, if Kevin can't help you, he'll know someone who can. Find him on LinkedIn, subscribe, or follow.